Welcome back everybody to Two Old Guys
and their records
with Vas,
Mike,
and today's episode or today's segment looks at first albums we bought. I suppose it's an extension of our previous episode on debut albums, because Mike here was talking about albums, and he talked about his first album that he bought, and I think that was a great idea. It was a good idea for us to do something about first albums.
Let's take a look at them.
Okay, and the thing is, what makes us buy that first album? What were you thinking at the time when you bought your first album? Like, it's a huge step for any young teenager or young person to buy that first album.
When I show you the record, you might understand.
Okay, so he is teasing us. Okay, mate, do the honours.
The very first record I ever bought was Suzie Quatro's Quatro album. This is her second album, went to #1 in Australia and probably many other countries. Suzie Quatro was big in the UK, of course, Australia, Japan. Those two markets seem to tie in really well together. What's popular in Australia will be popular in Japan and vice versa when it comes to foreign music such as this. Also big in Europe, absolutely nothing in the USA, her home country. If you listen to her first single, it's called Rolling Stone. It's a sob story about 16, on the road, all alone. We've heard this in song many times over. A complete failure, an absolute failure. So what do you do when you've got a singer that you've brought over from the USA, promise to make her a star, you see the potential, the first record doesn't work out, what do? You get three mean looking guys, there's the first album, wearing wife beaters, dress her up in leather. These three guys look like the sort of people you'd cross the street if you saw them walking down the road at night. The guy here, swigging his beer, they're all wearing wife beaters. Pretty scary to put three guys looking like that in front of a pint-sized 21, 22-year-old girl. That was the image they went for. I went and saw her in concert after I bought this album.
No way.
Hordern Pavilion, I would have been 15 or 16 years old. All the big fat bearded bikers were there, so they took the bait too and fell for this manufactured rock. If you listen to the songs, some great songs. I think I mentioned previously the song 48 Crash, #1 hit. Listen to the lyrics. The 48 Crash is a silk sash bash. What the hell does that mean? What's so good about this song? Great guitar work, great lyrics, great vocal delivery, sung with conviction, whatever a silk sash bash is. She's highly convinced that this is really important and she's got to get that message across. An interesting technique. They double up the vocals overlap from chorus to verse. And this just keeps pounding away, and the song doesn't let up in any way whatsoever. All of her songs were catchy, and even though there's a hard rock edge to it, there's an electric piano, just to give it that mellow touch. What I liked about this as a kid was the drum sound. The drums are overly compressed, they're big, they're fat, and they're in your face. However, when I listen to this today, this is a horrible drum sound. For the last 20 years, the way to get a big sounding drum kit is to get a big sounding drum kit and put some microphones on it. And don't worry about compressing it to make it sound big, because it's already big. So, you know, has it withstood the test of time? They're great little pop rock songs. You wouldn't record anything using these techniques today. It certainly worked for her. She still has a career. How many times has she visited Australia? 18, 19 times?
She could be an Australian citizen.
Yeah, she's could very well be. So that worked for her, made her a lot of money, entertained a lot of little boys and girls, and she still tours, even though she did a farewell tour last time. And yours?
Okay, my first one, and I've got to take you back. I was 11 years old.
11, okay.
11 years old, right? And I was looking for an album, and I remember on TV this commercial coming on for this compilation album for David Bowie. It could have been 1980, maybe 79, 1980. I'm not really sure. Okay, I think at the time Ashes to Ashes had come out. The new album was coming out, and maybe they wanted to cash in on that by creating a compilation, right? And the first record I bought was Chameleon by David Bowie
on the Starcore label.
On Starcore label. And what got me to buy this album was the commercial. There's some great songs on it. You know, your long blonde hair and your eyes are blue. The only thing I got from you is sorrow. What a couple of lines that was, right? And then you had things like Starman was on the commercial, and then there was 1984. But right at the end, where he says 1984, right? Okay, so I was hooked. All right, so this, you know, you can imagine asking your parents for money, because I'm not working at 11 or 12 years old. You ask your parents, can I go buy an album? They say, oh, you want to go buy an album? Yes. And I come home with a David Bowie album, right, like that, and my dad sees it. They go there, okay, but, you know, what's this? You know, why'd you bring this home? But for me, to be honest with you, I was actually quite disappointed by this. Because I didn't understand the concept. I'm only an 11-year-old boy going off the commercial. But Chameleon, I suppose, really looks at the different sides to Bowie. So it wasn't just Genie, Diamond Dogs, Rock. There's all these different type of songs, and I don't know, I think at 11 years old, 12 years old, Voodoo Schneider or Breaking Glass, I think, or Beauty and the Beast, we were just a little bit out there for an 11-year-old boy, you know. I just felt, you know, Starman lived up to it. I think, you know, 1980, you know, Sorrow lived up to it, 1984. But then there were some other tracks that were just beyond my tastes, you know what I mean, at that point. I mean, since then, you know, I'm a huge David Bowie fan. But at 11 and 12 years old, I thought, some of this is a bit too much for me, you know. But, you know, I was very, very fortunate to see Bowie live in the 80s under the Glass Spider Tour. Massive production. You know,
1980, Sydney Showgrounds.
Oh, wow. You saw me before me.
Absolutely.
Okay, wow.
Okay, that was before your show, okay.
Before my show. But I was very fortunate to see him, you know what I mean? Because, you know, after the 80s, he does go a little bit quiet after he marries and all that. But, yeah, and Bowie's is amazing. And I thought, you know, going back to the back cover, you see his evolution or his development as an artist through the different phases, the different characters. And I suppose that epitomizes the album, you know. This is a chameleon, someone who is changing or evolving through the 1970s. Right, so, yes, that was my first album. As I've said before, Mike is the guru of records. Okay, and one of the big issues at the moment is, you know, these remastering of albums. Okay, and you know they talk about where they get the master tapes and the source. You know, and we're getting, you know, from the original tapes, from the, you know, the source tapes. You know, how true is this, and why is it so controversial?
I think record collectors today expect something that's full analog. If they're buying an analog record, such as a gramophone record or what you might call a vinyl record, being an analog playback medium, they expect that any album that was recorded pre-1989 would have been recorded fully analog. So if they're going to, so back then the records were all cut from those analog masters. They would like to see that happen again today, but there's a big problem here. Number one, those analog tapes are quite often not playable today. The metal oxide layer on the tape sheds, so you put it on the tape machine and the brown oxide just flies off everywhere. So this means the tape is deteriorating. Why are you looking at me like that?
So what happened? So is that tape gone?
That tape is gone. So luckily in 1983, when the CD was the new big format, everything was transferred to digital. So when you buy an album today that says mastered from the original analog tape, that's fantastic if it's true. However, sometimes you see sourced from the original analog tape. Now, if the original recording was analog, then anything today, whether it's a CD, a download, whatever, it was of course sourced from the analog tape. That doesn't mean the record was cut directly from the analog tape. So, in 1983, in the lead up to the CD, everything was transferred to digital at a sampling rate of 44.1 kilohertz, all 16-bit. Today we wouldn't think of recording anything in 16-bit. 24-bit is pretty much the standard. Sampling rate up to 192 kilohertz as opposed to 44.1 kilohertz, which is a CD. So, if these were transferred for CD at 16 bits, 44.1 kilohertz, Today we have higher resolutions. If the analog tape is not available, if the analog tape is not playable, then that's all you have to work with. So some people argue, they say, well, you're just buying a CD on record. When you're paying $50, $30, $40, $50 and $60 for a record, an analog record, you expect it might be cut from the analog tape, the original analog tape, if at all possible. Why is it not possible? As I mentioned, the tape shreds. 2, Universal Music had a fire at their storage facility in Hollywood. They lost 500,000 songs. Can I say that again? 500,000 songs. Okay, were all of those analog? Maybe not, but a lot of them were. It doesn't matter because they have a digital backup somewhere else. Is the digital backup 16 bits, 44.1 kilohertz, or is it 24 bits, 192 kilohertz? Highly unlikely. Probably 16-bit because they transferred it for CD. So, when you buy a record today that says sourced from the original analog tape, it doesn't mean it was cut from the analog tape. And I should point out there are only 12 disc cutting studios in the world, and this is one of them, that can cut an analog record from an analog tape and keep it fully analog without any digital intervention whatsoever. So if you look at where the record was mastered, you need to know if that facility, if that studio has the facility to cut from analog tapes properly, or whether they used the analog tape and went through some sort of digital device in order to cut the record. So I think at the end of the day though, it's a question of what's your preferred playback medium. If you like the idea of gramophone records, buy the gramophone record. Where it comes from, who cares, as long as it sounds good.
Okay, as we did last time, and as we will always do, we'll finish off each episode or segment with a serious message, and that is keeping the current record industry alive by buying new albums. Okay, and we've been very, very lucky this year. We're moving towards Christmas. There's been a couple of great releases, and what record has got everyone talking at the moment with #1 status for weeks now is definitely ACDC's Power Up. Okay, it's grabbed everyone's attention. Okay, I must say. Any comments before I start?
No, you finish first. I'll make my comments afterwards.
Okay, so Power Up. Look, for me, it sort of reminds me of Van Halen's Some Different Kind of Truth, where they went back to archived stuff with David Lee Roth, and they sort of tweaked songs and released a new album. This album for me is Angus Young going back to the archives of Malcolm Young's riffs. So this is a riff fest. Riff fest. That sounds pretty good, eh? Riff fest.
Lots of riffarama.
Lots of riffs. Okay. Now I must say, who didn't watch a 60 Minutes interview with Angus and not have a tear when he talked about, you know, that great bond he has with his brother? You know, and then that sent me back to look again at the funeral of Malcolm Young. Okay, and you just such a heart-wrenching image of, you know, Angus being at the hearse and putting the guitar in the hearse and all that. You know, it was. But I think the time of mourning is sort of past, but I think Angus is ready to celebrate Malcolm Young, to celebrate his work, to celebrate his brother. And I think this album is all about that. You know, there's lots and lots of riffs here. Look, ACDC don't do anything different, but who wants them to do anything different? They've got a formula, and you know, so many songs remind me of other songs. Songs like Demon Fire remind me of Whole Lotta Rosie. Do I care? No, I don't, right? You know, you got Witch's Spell, who, you know, it reminds me of Who Made Who. You got Code Red, that's Back in Black. But you know something? Do I mind? No, because you've got all these riffs all on the one album. So I think it's like a eulogy. In the same way Back in Black was a eulogy to Bon Scott, I suppose this album is like a eulogy to Malcolm. And I think this is the least that Angus could do, right? And, wait for it, he's got the band back. He's got Brian Johnson back. Obviously they found a great hearing aid that he can actually continue on with. Because, you know, that rock or bust tour, really, they went bust. with Brian Johnson, dropping out on the tour. I think Cliff Williams retires after that tour. They went bust. So in this album here, he's got them back. He's got Cliff Williams back. Phil Rudd obviously isn't in house arrest anymore. Okay, the years have passed, right? So Malcolm's role as the rhythm guitarist has been replaced with a nephew. So keep it in the family. Another young. Okay, so keep it in the family. So it's exciting. It's exciting. There is nothing new, but I like it. I love it. You know what I mean? They start off with this anthemic realize. And they're realizing the years have gone past. Right? The years have gone past. There's, they've still got that arrogance. They've still got that arrogance, in rejection. If you reject me, I take what I want. You know what I mean? They've still got it, right? So for me, lots to like about it. And it's no wonder it's number one. And everyone, the big question here now is, when do they tour this album? So this is another big question, right? Okay, when do they tour? Because this is a touring album. It's guitar. It's a guitar fest. It's a riff fest. So I'm looking forward to a tour.
I have to admit, I haven't heard this album yet. I did notice I was super critical. Super reserved, I should say, about ACDC releasing a new album. Also, as I say, I haven't heard it, but I understand it is number one in Australia and many, many other countries. Now, am I enthused about that? Am I going to go out and buy it? Well, I'm glad you bought it. Maybe I can borrow it so I don't need to buy it, as we did as teenagers. But look, the thing is this. I remember an interview where the journalist said to Angus Young, after this is on the release of a new album, saying, and you've heard this before, Angus, you made the same album 14 times. And what did Angus say? 15. Or whatever the number was. So, we do know there's repetition there, but this is the sort of band that you definitely go and see live. Last time they played in Australia, they played at the ANZ Stadium. Okay, our venues have really, really strict fire laws. So they said to the venue, our drummer is a chain smoker. And they said no smoking on stage. They said, great, we'll go to Canberra, we'll do 2 shows in Canberra, and you can watch Sydney emptying out for the weekend. And of course the state government stepped in at that point and said, okay, he can smoke, but someone with a fire extinguisher has to stand next to him, or whatever.
Great story.
As if he's going to burn ANZ Stadium down with a cigarette or 3 or 10 or whatever. The guy's a chain smoker, that's it. So, the state government made that allowance to allow Phil Rudd to smoke on stage rather than having Sydney empty out and have 200,000 people going to Canberra for the weekend. The venue holds 100, 110,000 people, or 90,000, whatever it is, I don't recall. So that's the impact that ACDC have. Well, why did we go to see ACDC back then and all the other times? Do we buy their records? No. We go because they're Australian and we want to see them. We love the concept. We remember our youth. I mean, think about this. Who sings a chorus? Who writes a chorus? Oi. TNT, oi. Oi. What does oi mean? And how does that, we know what it means, but how does it fit into a song? It had never been done before. But this is Australian pub rock.
I think we should do a whole episode on Akadaka.
Let's do that.
Okay, so I think there's so much to talk about because they've got a rich history with some. We've got Bon Scott, Brian Johnson. We've got favourite albums, all that. I think we should do a whole episode.
Let's do it.
ACDC, power up. Okay, thank you everybody. Thanks for watching our episode. 2 old guys
and their records.
Vas,
Mike.
Thank you very much. See you next time.